Hello everyone and welcome to my dissertation presentation. My name is Sameea and I am a Masters of Counselling student at Bangor University. My presentation for today will focus on the relationship between male alexithymia and traditional masculinity in British men from various ethnic groups. The presentation will be split into 4 sections. Firstly, I will discuss the introduction, which will explore a bit of background literature into normative male alexithymia and traditional masculine norms, and how all of this has informed the research questions and hypotheses of the current study. I will also state what these hypotheses are. Secondly, I will cover the methods used for data collection. Next will be the results of the study, which will be followed by a discussion of the findings and any implications. So firstly, a little introduction into male mental health and why I chose to do this topic. A number of researchers have stated that there is a silent crisis when it comes to the mental health of men. This means that it has been recognized that male mental health is a topic of concern. However, it seems to have been somewhat disregarded in the research. According to statistics from 2019, approximately 76% of suicides in the UK are committed by men. In addition to this, suicide is also said to be the largest cause of death for males who are under the age of 35. Therefore, the previous research shows that there are glaring issues in the topic of male mental health, and these issues need to be addressed and discussed in an efficient way. There are various factors which impact on poor male mental health, one of which has been identified as alexithymia. The most concise definition of alexithymia is the inability or difficulty to recognize, experience, and express emotions. A few of the other symptoms can be seen on the image in front of you. Although it is not recognized as a mental health condition, alexithymia often occurs with a number of other mental health conditions, such as the ones on the screen. Furthermore, as this graph and other previous research shows, alexithymia is more prevalent in males than females. This brings us on to why males display higher levels of alexithymia than females. One of the main causes has been recognized as the societal expectations and traditional male gender norms that have been placed on and socialized by young boys and men. Research shows this kind of socialization leads males to be less emotionally aware and expressive. Now, the current study focused on a specific type of alexithymia termed Normative Male Alexithymia, or NMA. This was proposed by Levant, who describes it as a socially constructed type of alexithymia which is prevalent in boys and men who have been raised to conform to traditional male gender roles and norms. Some of the main traits found in normative male alexithymia include toughness, competition and teamwork, and not expressing or showing vulnerable emotions. Previous research has found a relationship between NMA and traditional masculinity. However, the majority of this was conducted on a white American population, and this relationship hasn't been explored much beyond that. Therefore, in the current study, we are looking to see if this relationship is similar or different in a British male population, and we are also looking to see if these differences are also apparent in different ethnic groups. Now, the second aspect of this research project explored NMA and male role norms within different ethnic groups in the UK. Now, ethnicity groups were categorized by BAME, which stands for Black, Asian, and Minority Ethnic Groups. The reason why ethnicity was explored as another factor is because research shows that mental health is worse in some BAME groups in comparison to the majority white population in the UK. For example, it was found that men from BAME groups display higher levels of mental health deterioration in comparison to the majority group of white men. People from BAME groups are also less likely to seek out professional mental health support and services, and Black British adults are the least likely group to acquire mental health treatment. One of the reasons for this is due to the high levels of mental health stigma within these ethnic groups. This stigma is something that has been socialized, reinforced, and maintained within ethnic groups, and is ultimately affecting individuals' mental health. Therefore, as the previous research shows, there are disparities in mental health in ethnic communities. It will be interesting to see if this extends to male alexithymia and male role norms. The previous research also implies and leads us to believe that BAME groups would display higher levels of these variables. This is because people from BAME backgrounds are more reluctant towards mental health issues than the majority white group, and because they display higher levels of socialization of traditional gendered norms. This leads me onto the current study and the research questions for it. As mentioned before, previous research has looked at the association between normative male alexithymia and the impact of traditional male socialization in a predominantly white American population. However, this has not been explored on a British population where there may be disparities between these factors, as there may be different types of traditional male role norms within the UK, and these may have been socialized in various ways. This may also be different within various ethnic groups, as they have their own cultural factors that also play a role in this. Therefore, the first question of this study was to explore whether there was a relationship between normative male alexithymia and male role norms in British men. The second question looks at whether there are any differences in normative male alexithymia and male role norms between different ethnic groups within the UK. In terms of hypotheses, there are three for the current study. The first hypothesis states that a significant positive correlation will be found between normative male alexithymia and male role norms. The second hypothesis predicts that males from BAME groups will display higher levels of normative male alexithymia in comparison to the majority white group. And the final hypothesis predicts that males from BAME groups will score higher on levels of traditional male role norms than white males. Participants for this study were recruited via social media, email, and the Bangor University Student Participation Panel. The inclusion criteria to take part in the study was that participants had to be British men who were over the age of 18 and whose gender assigned at birth was male, and they were thus raised as a male with male gender norms. 172 participants completed the full research study. Of this 172, 124 of the participants identified their ethnicity as white, 47 identified as being from a BAME group, and one participant preferred not to state their ethnicity. The ages of the participants range from 18 to 89 years of age. An online questionnaire was used to collect data from these participants. The questionnaire consisted of two already existing scales. The first measured normative male alexithymia, and the second measured male role norms. Moving on to the results. A Pearson's correlation was conducted on the data to see if there was any association between the two variables of normative male alexithymia and male role norms. As you can see on this graph, a significant positive correlation was found between the two. This result was expected and is supported by the previous research, as it implies that men who have higher levels of normative male alexithymia are also likely to have high measures of male role norms and vice versa. This means that the first hypothesis of this study was accepted. A t-test was used to compare normative male alexithymia scores between BAME and White participants. The results showed that there was no statistical difference in normative male alexithymia between BAME and White participants. However, a non-statistically significant difference was found between the two groups, with BAME men displaying slightly higher levels of normative male alexithymia. This means that although no statistical difference was found, it can be argued that there is a non-statistical difference between the two groups, and further research could potentially explore this. A further t-test was conducted to compare male role norms between BAME and White males. The findings implied that there is a statistical difference in male role norms between ethnic groups, and that BAME men display a higher degree of male role norms than white men. This supports the previous predictions and means that the final hypothesis of the study was accepted. So what are the implications of these results? So firstly, the results imply that British men who have been socialised with male role norms are more likely to have difficulty recognising and expressing emotions. This links with and supports previous research which states that there is a relationship between male alexithymia and male role norms. The results of this study also show that British BAME men are likely to have been socialised with traditional male norms to a higher degree than white males. This links with previous research which shows that BAME groups tend to have a higher socialisation of gendered norms. The final result, which although was statistically not significant, showed there was a non-statistical difference in normative male alexithymia between ethnic groups. Therefore, it can be argued that BAME men scored slightly higher on levels of normative male alexithymia compared to white males, even though this hypothesis cannot be accepted in the current study. One of the reasons why the significance levels were not much different between the two ethnic groups, which were BAME and White, is potentially due to the small sample size of only 47 BAME participants in comparison to 172 white participants. These figures may be reflective of the percentage of minority and majority ethnic groups in the UK. However, there may also be other factors influencing this. For example, BAME men may have been less likely to do a study on male mental health, as previous research shows there are higher levels of mental health stigma within ethnic minority groups, and thus they are less likely to talk about mental health in general. This makes it difficult as researchers to gain information on mental health within BAME communities, and this is something that needs to be explored in future research. Furthermore, these findings can be used to help advance therapeutic interventions for men. As we have found out, British men have been socialised in male role norms and thus are less likely to be aware and expressive of their emotions. Therefore, the one-size-fits-all interventions in counselling and psychotherapy may not be effective as they do not take into consideration the role that socialisation of male role norms can have on men. Thus, any treatments or interventions should be gender-specific and applied in a sensitive and appropriate manner for men. Another way to apply these results to the real world is to implement early interventions in young boys about healthy male role norms. Educating and socializing young boys who are just beginning to learn about gender roles and norms would be hugely beneficial in lowering rates of normative male alexithymia. It would allow them to learn about healthy male role norms and how to be self-aware and expressive of their emotions from a young age. These interventions can be taught in schools, youth clubs, media programs by educational staff, mentors, parents, and so forth. Furthermore, as we have explored the differences between BAME and White groups in the current study, future research could explore how individuals from both a BAME and White community, e.g. an individual may have one parent from a white background and the other from a BAME, and how this affects their socialization of gendered norms and their levels of alexithymia. Future research could also look at ethnic groups individually. The current study focused on BAME as a whole group. However, further research could expand on this and explore differences within individual ethnic groups, e.g. comparing Arab or Indian ethnic groups. So what is the final take-home message from this research project? British men who have received higher levels of socialization of male role norms are more likely to have higher levels of normative male alexithymia. This is also the case for British men from BAME communities, who are also more likely to have increased level of gendered socialization in comparison to white males. Counselling and therapeutic practices and professionals should be aware of this and tailor mental health treatments to meet the needs of men. Thank you all very much for listening to and watching my presentation. If you have any questions, please let me know.